Hey, and welcome back. Now, for a program to be useful, you need a way to get interaction from your users, and one of the basic way you do that is to get input from your users by just asking them for some information. They provide that information, and you are able to process that information to give out some useful output. Now we're going to write some programs where we are going to request our users to provide us with some details, and then we'll write some logic that uses what the user provides. I'm back in our coding view, and as usual, the first thing I want to do is to get rid of the previous code we wrote. Remember, you can back up this code. Okay, save this, and of course no output. Good. So let's start on a clean sheet. Now before we start getting input from our users, I want us to just see something cool. All right, now remember, we can store values in a variable, right? So let's say I have a variable called name, and it should be assigned to a string value. Remember, strings use quotes, and I want to give it the value of John. Okay, and I can save that. Now when I refresh the page, of course nothing happens because we haven't printed out the name, but I could use document dot write line name, and when I refresh, I can see John, because John is the value stored inside the variable name. Now we looked at operators recently, and there was one I actually didn't mention, and it's a very useful operator, and that is the concatenator operator. And your concatenation operator is this, the plus sign. And you might be wondering, the plus sign is used for addition, right? When you're having numbers. Yes. When you have numbers, this sign is known as the addition operator, and it adds two numbers together. When we work with strings, the concatenator operator is plus. So when it's numbers, plus is used for addition. When it's strings, it's used for concatenation. Let me just put that up there. Concatenation operator. Okay, and that is just the plus sign. So what does the concatenator operator do? It combines two strings together. So if I have two strings, I can use the concatenator operator to merge them. So for instance, I am is one string, and if we have a boy as another string. Now notice I have two strings here, right? Because I started with one and ended the other, and started the second one and ended it here. If I should try to refresh this, I will have an error and I wouldn't see anything. Why? Because I'm trying to put two distinct values here, and this causes an error. But if I have two separate strings and I want them together, I would just use the concatenator operator to combine both of them into one value. I should save that and refresh. Sorry, I forgot to remove this plus sign here, so that actually caused an error. So let me get rid of that. Save and refresh. Okay, I can see I am a boy. Alright, so I actually pronounced it the way I saw it here, but it's just because we combined these two strings together and there was no space in the string. I can actually put the space within the string, and we should see I am a boy. So this how concatenation works, by combining two strings together. Now remember, when you have a variable, it has a value, and that variable can be used to do everything you could have done with that value. So since I have name as a variable, I can actually concatenate name, since it's a string variable, right? I can concatenate it with another string. So we can have I am plus and just name. Notice this name does not have quotes. All right, it's just name. Why? because name is a variable. If I should save and refresh, I can see I am John. Okay, I can am and John are connected together, so I can put a space in here to separate them. So I am John. So what I just showed you now is concatenation, combining two strings together. Now remember, if I had put name within quotes, this is no longer a variable, but it's now a string name. If I should save and refresh this, I would see I am name, because this is no longer treated as a variable but a string, and a string will show just exactly the way it is. So if I want it to be a variable, no quotes, and it will reference the variable I defined here and concatenating it with a string. Okay, save, refresh, I am John. All right, so now we've seen the concatenation operator. Now what if we don't want to assign this value ourselves, right? Because for any person who like uses this application, we would always see I am John. Okay, but we don't just want Johns to be using our application, right? We want everybody to use our application. So we need a way to get the user to enter in their name, and then we show them this message saying I am John, or well, whatever message we want. So there are various ways you can take input using JavaScript, but we're still in the beginning phase. I just want to use something kind of basic. Remember at the start of this tutorial, I did mention that I'm using a customized script, right? So make sure you've downloaded that zip file that I shared earlier. If you haven't, this is another time for you to download it. I will be adding the link in the description, so you can still download it. Okay, if not, you might not get the same result we would get right now. Okay, so moving on, one of the easiest ways you can get users input in JavaScript is to use the prompt function. So what does that do? The prompt function just creates a pop-up with some text and allows the user to enter some input. So this is what happens. I want to comment these two lines out so that they don't run. So this is how prompt works. You just write prompt and you provide a string. So for example, what is your name? Okay, so prompt to bring out a pop-up, and whatever string you provide here will be shown as a text to the user. Remember, you don't need to cram or wonder why it works. Just follow the rule for now, and so long as you're following the rule, you would see the result of your program. As you go further, you get to understand why this works. Okay, so just make sure for now that you're writing this prompt. Okay, open brackets, put in a string. Here we have what is your name, then you close your bracket and remember your semicolon. So if I should save this and refresh, now you see we see this prompt saying what is your name, and you can provide anything here, James, and you can hit enter or just press OK. And yeah, like I said, I have a customized script here which will also bring up what that dialog said and your input into the browser screen. So you can see what is your name, and our input was James. Okay, so what if now we don't just want to show what our prompt was, but rather we want to, well, use it for something else. When you use the prompt function, whatever value is inputted is actually returned to you. Okay, and if that value, note, if the value is returned, it means that you can do whatever you want with that value, like we have always been doing with a value, such as storing the value inside the variable. So right now I want to store the results of this inside our variable name. Okay, so first off, let me quickly uncomment these 2 lines. So we'll still get the same thing as before. If name is equals to John, then we can use document.writeLine and write that into the console, concatenating the name. But now, rather than just hard code John, we want to use the name that the user typed in this prompt. And a very easy way to do that is to take that and replace the value. Okay, now I want to backtrack a bit just so that you're not confused. You define a variable, right? Name, and you can assign that variable to a value. But now we don't want to hard code the value. So what we decide to do instead is to use a function that can ask our users for that value. And when our users provide that value, that function gives that value back to us. So we can actually store that value and use it for something else later on. Okay, that's the function of prompt. So now whatever value the user types in here, we store inside name. And then we concatenate name to I am and print it to the screen. So let's see how this looks like. Save, refresh. What is your name? I say John. Well, let me use something else. Let me say Dave. Okay, and look at that. What is your name was the question. We provided Dave, and we can see I am Dave, which is this. So Dave was gotten from the prompt, stored into name, and then we printed out I am plus what we stored here, which is what's Dave. So we got I am Dave. I can refresh this again, provide a different name, Sarah. Okay, and you can see I am Sarah. So we're not just using a hard-coded name like we did in the beginning, but rather we are taking the user's input, holding it as a string, and using that in our program to give some outputs.